So the floor is now open for questions. We have 15 minutes to do so. Yes, please. Please turn on your mic. Introduce yourself and please turn on your microphone.
My name is Professor Linson. I'm a neuroscientist interested in education and governance. You say in your pamphlet here, unchecked challenges in open science can jeopardize academic freedom. So can checked challenges in open science, depending on what instructions the checker has received, what kind of political financial instructions the checker has received. Colleagues have been, worldwide, have been literally smeared and censored during the COVID pandemic because they questioned the COVID official narrative. They had an alternative understanding of the pathophysiology of COVID, and they had serious issues. So I'm wondering how can you guarantee freedom of research, independence of research, when you consider this terrible political pressure on researchers? Now you have political treatments for certain medical conditions. I mean, it's becoming completely surrealistic. Thank you.
And do you want a specific speaker to respond to your question? Or
well, I was actually picking up on Henrika's
all right, Henrika, please.
Presentation, but it's a reaction to all the panelists, but specifically.
I can start, and I hope my esteemed colleagues will come to my support. I think there'll be absolutely no guarantee. I don't think. I hope no one would ever suggest such a thing. What I think we need is way more talk about this issue. The freedom of speech for researchers, looking at the threats both from the inside and the outside. I think the inside pressure has been very little talked about. It's almost like airing your dirty laundry in public, and it's not really a smart thing to do. And we need to think when it's appropriate, because if we don't do it well, we will come across to those who want to undermine research as the prize ponies, that we've given them the reason to say, well, if they can't agree, we can't listen to them at all. So the way we talk about it, we need to be careful as a community. We need to address it, but not in a way that we give the research and science doubters even more kind of room and energy to say we're not worth listening to. But I don't think there's any guarantees. All I'm advocating for is way more recognition and discussion about it. Frank?
Can I say something?
Yes, please.
I think that there are two things to it. Yes, you should not. There are two ways to think about it. So the first thing is, I think that I have seen the discussion over the past 10 years since open science and since the discussions about science are now much in the open. 15 years ago, people didn't talk about a lot of the things that we now discuss here. Not in Europe, never. So there's an openness. The thing is that I think counterintuitive to your question. Counterintuitive is that yes, if you discuss how scientific facts are established, how groups of experts discuss until they are blue in the face, and until they say, well, at this point in time we think yes, HIV is causing AIDS. I've been in that discussion in the early 90s. There will always be people say, well, this is just an opinion, etc., etc. But most of the people, 90% of the people, realize that if this is not a personal opinion of a scientist who says HIV is causing AIDS. This is what the experts in the community, and this is, of course, American pragmatism. You can go to my book. This is, of course, how scientific, say, facts are being established and also destroyed. Because if there is new information, new data, and in COVID, for instance, we saw there came new data within half a year, and people say, oh, then we have to rethink, etc., etc. And it was all in the open. So it was openly discussed on television, on social media, in the journals, that there was a new information and that experts had sat down and say, okay, now we have to. And so I think in the end, I am for openness, like I discuss it now with you. So no, there are no personal opinions in science. there's a group of experts, this is the community of inquiry that is coming to a sort of consensus at that time. And it can change over time, and then we will also inform, and we will show people the discussion, we will show, and there will always be 5 or 7% of the people who will not want to believe it, etc., etc. There are still people who think that vaccines are very poor, irrespective of the measles problem that we have now in Holland, and diphtheria. We have everything there back because people don't take this, at some spaces, don't take the vaccines. So I'm for total openness, like I do it, and I also made a strong argument in my book about it, Biedema, Open Science, the very idea, 2022. And you can disagree with me, but I think in the end, it helps to be very clear about it. And what is interesting, and now I stop, I went with my granddaughter to a local museum of science. This is NEMO in Amsterdam. Some people may know it. And there I saw even this being explained on the billboards in an item, what is science about? And now even for a lot of expats who took their kids there, I was there Sunday afternoon, and this is discussed. So people discuss that science is not an opinion. There's groups of experts. I have made photos and I can show to you. I was amazed. And so I'm pleading for openness. Show people how science is being done. If you are insecure and you keep it secret, doesn't help. Doesn't help a lot. And if you are the other way, arrogant, and you say, well, I cannot explain to you because we are so clever, we don't even want to explain to you. That also we have seen a lot. Thank you very much.
Right. Thank you very much. There's a question from Paul Rubik, former MEP, Stoa Chair.
Yes, first of all, thank you so much. My name is Paul Rubik. I'm from the Economic and Social Committee. We are an advisory group of people for all European institutions and for legislation. And I also was working a lot in Stoa as a member of European Parliament. And I think it's so important to see that the options assessment is key in a scientific debate. So I always said there is a thesis, and we have to allow an antithesis. And hopefully, you never know, you get a synthesis. So these 3 accords, I think, are quite important for the future, because out of history we have learned if the earth is flat, you are burned. Because society has the opinion the earth is flat, and if you say no, it's round, you are burned. Today it's a little bit easier, not immediately burned on the marketplace, but in the social media you get a lot of response on if you say, as an example, climate is not human-made. Or if you say vaccination did harm to the people, or if you say genetic engineering is the best we can have. So I have a lot of examples in this area, but the freedom of academic is exactly what we have to fight for. And I'm so happy that Stoa is now putting it onto the agenda, that we see that harassment or mobbing or stalking because you say the earth is flat. I think we as a scientific community, we have to be tolerant and respectful to any kind of opinion which we get.
Yeah, sorry, but this is in the academic debate, also in the academic debate, but also when academics do this debate in the open, in the public debate. We agree on that, right? Yeah, and then, of course, eventually, academic debates will be solved in the academic communities, not on social media.
Yeah. Any comments? Any other comments from any first speakers? All right. Other questions? You had a question, and then next, you please. Yes.
Thank you very much. My name is Jos Fuik. I'm the parliamentary assistant of Christian Ehler, the chair of the STOA panel. And I had questions for Professor Gat and for Professor Bogers, Bogers, yes, if that's okay. Sorry. So first for Professor Gat, thanks for the interesting presentation, but I was wondering, as the Parliament has to work, as was mentioned by Ivars earlier, soon on a new funding program. Do you have any guiding words for us how this new approach should be translated in a very general program that is the European Framework Program, on how the project selection should be done, how excellence selection should be considered, and things like this? So that's the question for Professor Bogers. I used to work for TNO in the past. I think there are some TNO colleagues also somewhere here in the room. Yes. And one of the questions that came up there quite a lot is, of course, how we do innovation, but also in the end, how innovation actually gets into society. And I saw in your whole presentation, the focus seems to be on the companies that do innovation rather than the companies that will need to use innovation. And that's kind of similar with open science. You try to make the translation to the ones that need to use the outcome of the science, not just the production of science. So could you maybe reflect a little bit on how do we get innovation, but maybe then also science out there? What can we do as policymakers also to facilitate that?
I'll respond first. Thanks. It's a great question. Yes, so the Coalition on Advancing Research Assessment does now have a working group which is looking specifically at this issue as to how how funders can evaluate more fairly and more inclusively and in line with COARA principles around valuing a broader range of contributions, avoiding rankings, thinking, valuing the qualitative over the quantitative. So how do we translate those COARA principles into practice for funding organisations? So I think that will be something to watch. It might not, I don't know whether the timing will coincide particularly well. But I suppose my other answer would just be to really take a look at the scope framework and to see whether that might help you. So the UK Research and Innovation, the joint funding bodies in the UK have used scope, for example, to develop the next REF. And they found that by kind of following this kind of broad framework, it did help them kind of avoid some of the pitfalls and to really think about what it is we actually value about the research that we are funding. What is it we actually want to achieve here? And it's a big piece of thinking, which often we don't do, and and doing it collectively with stakeholders is a big piece of work. But it's essential that we do that if we want to reward the right things and get the right get value for money out of what we're investing in terms of our research. So I definitely kind of commend that to you. Yeah.
Can I ask a very short follow-up?
Follow-up, yeah, short follow-up.
Very short. Does that mean that we should specify for individual calls how we assess excellence or impact or things like this? Because that's a step I don't think we have made yet at the European level.
I think so. Yeah, I mean, it's and excellence obviously is a contested term, as is impact. But trying to specify exactly what you mean by that, I think would be really helpful and instructive and long-term beneficial to the region. Yeah.
Thank you, Elizabeth. Marcel.
Yep, thank you. Yes, I think your question was a little bit about how can we not only focus sort of narrowly on commercialization and appropriation by individual companies, but look in a broader perspective in sort of the use and implementation of innovation in general, right? If I got the question. So in a way, you're right. So a little bit on purpose, I tried to present a more narrow perspective to sort of try to frame where I'm coming from in that respect, but I do think that sort of in general, when you think of open innovation as a research space, it can also be interpreted in a broader sense. That is not only about individual companies that are making money, but it's also about, okay, how do innovations in communities get implemented? So this is why I also mentioned in that process model, it's not only about commercialization, but also how do things get really implemented? Because in the end, even if you focus on the financial benefit of a company, the innovation still needs to be implemented in a broader context. The other element, I think, of the answer is that I think it's increasingly important to focus more on the innovation ecosystem as a main unit of analysis. I also think in the European context that is really highlighted and promoted. So I think we're in a way on the good track. Because this is, first of all, I think the only way to really address complex societal challenges. But more to your question, I think it's also about, innovation ecosystems are really about, how do you create a sort of surplus complementary value by working together. So you can create value in a way that you don't do by yourself. So there's extra value you create, which is not only economic value or financial, it can be economic, it can be societal, environmental, and I think this is where the focus should be. But still you need to go back to the individual organization because that's how we govern things and how things work. So it's still about, okay, how can they capture part of that value, but in a way that ultimately there's a positive net value created jointly. I hope that answers your question.
Thank you. There is one more question, if you can make this short, please. Thank you. And if you can...
Yeah, I have studied physics and informatics, a member of the European Physical Society. I have a short question concerning the COVID pandemic, and I have here the European Code of Conduct for Research Integrity. And here you have violation of research integrity, withholding research data or results without justification is a very hard violation of research integrity. In the COVID time, we have no data and no explanation for the Chinese government. And I am very shocked that because of this situation, there are millions of people dead. And you will say me, yes, we have a lot of international organizations. Yes, we have a World Health Organization. It's a Polish one. The Secretary General is supported by China. The wife of Chinese president is working there. They will never say nothing negative against China. My question is, why do you don't have a juridical legislation for the scientific and the researcher in this situation? We have no legislation, no juridical possibility to ask about this, to force this government to give us the information.
This is a problem that I recognize. I think we have to be very honest. My first name is Frank, so let's be frank. We have to be honest. If you do open science, and if you go to this scheme that we have now, and also the Commissioner, we have also lined out open innovation, also in the responsible research and innovation time that was already done. So if we want to go that, and we go in this direction, and we steer academia, the funders, the knowledge producers, together with their partners in different countries, the only thing that you have to realize, and this is your question, there's a lot of issues that are not decided within academia. They are in the politics, in the political environment of a nation, of our or whatever, Europe. So many issues that we have and that we would like to see, say, improved or changed, are not in the domains of academia. They are in the domains of the politics of a specific country. And I'm not going to give a lot of, say, examples, but you know them. You know them. So if people don't adhere at WHO, I'm an infectious disease specialist, then this is not an issue of academia. Academia, institutions, scientists are overruled by national politics. And this is outside the realm of this board. But it's very important, and I agree, and therefore I'm so very, very specific about it, and it should be addressed also in Europe, and Europe should go on and say target the specific countries who fail and who are not adhering to these type of, say, rules and rights. But it is not in the domain of people in academia, but we can only show it, and it's also in my book. I made several examples. Open science is thriving in open societies. And open societies, I rest my case.
Yeah, thank you very much for that. We don't have time. You have to go for a short coffee break. Before doing that, well, anyway, I wanted to say that we probably are in the right environment talking about governance questions. So though we are definitely not the right people to answer that question, but we are in the right environment.